Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I know it's been a while since I've done this, but I'm back, and as you can see behind me, got a new background, moved into a new house, which is awesome. You can still see some books in the or some boxes in the background. We're still in the process of unpacking, but super excited to be back. Also got back from Iceland, so it's been a wonderful little hiatus, a little vacation from the live stream, but we're back, and I'm excited to be back. It's an exciting time. We've got a great challenge set up today, I think, from Luke. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at what we're going to be dealing with here. So if I go to, here we go, now we're up. Okay, so we're going to be doing about what is the average occupancy by weekday. So any given weekday, what is the average occupancy? So we've got some data. If we look at the data here, let's go ahead and do a quick view of the data. As we can see here, we've got a new view data field, or a new view data dialog in Tableau 22.2, which is what I'm on. So we've got very simple bookings. This is coming from the Accelerators workbook on hospitality. So definitely, if you're interested in this kind of challenge and want to see more kind of things about it, so this is real world fake data. Taking a look at, which is what run by Mark Bradburn. Really, really cool stuff. Definitely check out that initiative, that community initiative, if you're looking for something fun to do. So what you can see here is just a list of, here are, what a registry at a hotel would look like. So you've got, the property, the rate type, reservation ID. You've got how many adults are staying, how many children are staying, when they're checking in, when they're checking out. I think we've got some checkouts in here. So lots of really cool stuff. So what we want to do is by status date, which is the status that they check in or check out, on any given day rolled up to the weekday level, how many on average are we seeing at each of the three properties? So that's what we're going to take a look at. This is what we want it to look like. I have already opened it up in a new tab right here. So this is what we're attempting to go build. So let's go to it. Take a look at the requirements, see if there's anything we need to do first. One sheet, okay. Calculate the occupancy by adding all the children and adults with a reservation. That is not a no-show. Okay, so let's do reservations. Let's see what this is. I'll describe this. There's our no-show status, so we need to exclude that. So let's go ahead and add that to our filters. I'll just select no-show, click exclude. That will bring in everything else. Filter the max date in the data set. All right, so let's do date filter, and we'll do status date is less than or less than the fixed max of status date. So we don't want to bring in the max. We don't want to look at the max status date. We only want to look at previous status dates. So we'll click OK, date filter. I only want to bring in the true fields. There we go. We're looking good so far. All right, so now we need to figure out a way. So let's do some, always, I think I've talked about it on this program, on this channel a few times, but crosstabs are good. Crosstabs are good for validation, for development. So especially when you're talking about dates or anything like that, go ahead and just start building everything in a crosstab. That way you make sure that your stuff is, if it's going to be anything very complicated, just do it in a crosstab. That way you can see how your numbers are lining up. You can see everything. And then once you get your numbers tied out in a crosstab, then all you have to do is convert that crosstab into a view, into a visual. So, all right, let's do, I don't know why I did that. Didn't need to do that. We'll go ahead and make these data source filters. Okay, now let's bring in status date, exact date, discrete exact date. It's like that. And we'll have, let's do measure names, measure values. We just want adults and children. And we probably want our reservation ID so that we can see everything. Yeah, so you can see 2/5, right? So on this date, on 1/1/20, here are all of the reservation IDs. Here are the check-ins, right? But what we also have to do is we have this status, which is, I believe it's the check-in or check-out. Yes, it is. Okay, so let's do this. So we've got that, and then, yeah, so there's some checkouts here, okay? All right, so let's go back to, let's get rid of this. There we go, that's what I wanted right there, right? So we have, on 1/1/20, there are a total of 694 adults, 713 children, and no checkouts, right? But on the second day, we have 700 more of each coming in, but we've also got some people leaving, right? So we need to, so on this day, what is our occupancy for 1/2/20? Well, it's the summation of these people, right? These people are checking in. It also includes these people, right? Because they're still here. They've checked in before that. They've checked in before this date, and we know that only these amount of people are leaving, right? So let's see. Let's do calculated field. Let's do let's start to bring out, let's start to build out our occupancy, right? This is just on this day, on a particular day, what is, for each day, what is the occupancy, right? We'll worry about the preceding dates in just a little bit, but for each day, we need to be able to calculate the total number of check-ins, the total number of checkouts, and then we need to subtract those two together. If status equals check-in, yes, if status equals check-in, then we're going to do, we need to add adults plus children. Else, meaning if status is check out, what are we going to do here? Well, we need to subtract them, right? We need to subtract. So the inverse of subtracting is addition by negative numbers. So let's do that. Let's do negative adults minus plus minus children, right? So, and then we're going to end that. So this is a row level calculation because I don't have an aggregation across, I don't have any aggregation in here, right? So this is going to happen on every single row. So for every single row, it's going to sum up the adults and children if it says check in. If it's check out, it's going to flip the sign of the adults and children, and it's going to add those two together. So the other thing we need to take into account is we might have some zeros, and Tableau kind of gets a little weird. Oh yeah, see that down here? We've got some nulls here, so we need to handle those nulls so that, because since null is a concept, right? It's not a value, it's a concept, right? So we need to figure out a way to handle that when we do aggregations. And the way that we do that is we just wrap everything in a z-in function, right? So we're gonna z-in all this stuff. So z-in, and then z-in z-in. Okay, so again, check-ins, we're going to add these two together. Checkouts, we're going to add these two together and then flip the sign. So could we simplify this? Yeah, we could. Let's do that, and we'll wrap that whole thing. So now it's just the exact same thing, only we're flipping the sign, right? That probably makes a lot more sense. Okay, so let's do that. Let's click OK, and let's drag this in here. Let's go back up to the top. So 789 and 785 equals 1574. 45 and 46 equals 91, right? And we know that it worked because it flipped the sign. So all the checkouts are negative, all the check-ins are positive, right? So now what we need to do is we need to do a sum. Now we can start summing this up. So now when we sum the occupancy, so we can go ahead and remove What are we going to remove? We're going to remove, we know that this is working, so we can remove adults and children now, right? So now we have check-ins and check-outs. So now what I can do is we can create a new calculation. And this is where we're going to start building in, and actually, we can actually get rid of this because we've solved for the check-in, we've solved for the status in the calculation. So now we just have status and we have occupancy. And what you can see there is what happened, right? So let's bring this back real quick. Bring it back. 1574 and negative 91. When I remove status, that's going to be the sum of those two numbers because we have sum of occupancy here on our text card. So it's going to do that summing for us, right? So let's remove status and let's see if 1574 minus 91 equals 1483. Hey, it did. That's good. All right. So that's being taken care of by this function, right? This aggregation takes place of this occupancy, or this. It's doing what we want to. So now I think what we can do is we can just do a running sum of occupancy. And remember, because we're accounting for the checkouts in our calculation, because 1407, there are still 1,400 people that are here, right? But we also had check-ins on the next day. And here we had check-ins on the next day. So this is our daily occupancy. For each individual date. But what this is going to do is it's going to give us a running sum of that. So we'll call this running occupancy. Or, yeah, we'll call it running occupancy. I was thinking about calling it daily occupancy, but that might not necessarily be right. And that's just we're just gonna sum this up. And we'll click OK. Now 1407 plus 2890. And again, remember, we know that this is right because we proved it in the crosstab, right? We know that this calculation is accounting for the checkouts. So when we sum this up, that's what we've got, right? And you can see here, remember all those zero nulls, all those null dates that we had, all those null check-ins that we wrapped in the ZN function. That's how you know, right? That's how you know this is working, is because all of these are negative, right? Because it's adding up the check-ins plus the check-outs, and because there are no check-ins, it's only check-outs, all of these numbers are negative. Okay, so let's go ahead. What are we going to do now? Now we need to figure out, we're going to start to, I think we are really close here. So let's start a new sheet. And we'll take status date up to columns. We'll change the aggregation to our weekday. We also know that we have property. All right. And if we bring in our running occupancy, things are gonna be weird here for a minute. And what are we supposed to do? Calculate the occupancy, find a way, what are we doing here? Average occupancy. Okay, so the average. Okay, so then what we need to do is we probably need to, when I hear that makes me think of the window average, because what we need to do is we need to figure out of all of the Sundays, right? So if I just run this, if I bring this up in here, this is just doing a massive aggregation of every single Sunday at the Cord property. It's just summing up those numbers, right? That's all it is. But what I really want to do is I want to have the average of all of the Sundays at the Cord, not just the summation, but what is the average amount of people, what is the average running occupancy of all Sundays at the Cord? What is that, right? So what we're going to do is there's a couple things we need to do. One, we need to wrap this in a window function, because what that's going to do is that's going to do a window function to aggregate everything at the window average of that, and we'll call this average weekday occupancy. All right, so we'll click OK here. Now, anytime you're doing a window function, Tableau can only, because those are happening so far down in the order of operations, you have to put all of the data in your window that you want Tableau to calculate on. So that means that we need to bring the individual status date into our data, right? So we need to put every single date in this view. So that's going to be the exact date of status date. And what you can see is that, right? So we have 945 marks. We have a date in here represents every single Sunday. A box in here, every single Sunday at the Cord. Every box in this quadrant is a Wednesday at the Marimekko property. That's how that's working. So now when I do average weekday occupancy, I get some weird things happening, right? And the reason why is because our table calculation is not really working. We need to do some crazy nested. Now, here's a quick little side lesson on this, right? So now, there's two ways that you can build table calculations. There's two ways that you can use table calculations in Tableau. If you're familiar, if you've ever heard people talking about nested table calculations, this is what we're talking about, where we have a window function, a window average, right, of a running occupancy, which is a running sum, which is another window function, right? So this is essentially the same thing as doing window average running sum occupancy. Okay? All right. This calculation is essentially syntax-wise the same as this. Okay, I think I need another. There we go. It's the exact same thing, right? Because we have 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay. Syntax-wise, exact same. And here's where the power of Tableau comes in real handy. By writing it the way that I did, meaning I've nested, you might be thinking, well, isn't this nesting? It is. But the power of writing each table calculation separately and doing table calculations on top of that is when you go to edit your table calculation, you now have the ability to set the compute using for each running sum, or for each table calculation, each window function separately. So let's figure out real quick while we do this. I'm just going to go ahead and create a field. Actually, what I'll do is I'll do average weekday occupancy. Oh, I didn't keep that comment. That's okay. We'll do this. This is average weekday occupancy option 2, right? And it was window average of the running sum of the sum of occupancy. Okay. Now I'm going to take that calculated field that I just created. I'm going to put it up here just for now. You can see they're both table calculations. You can see that I still have the ability to edit the table calculation, but take a look at what's happening. When I go here, the way that I set up my compute using is what's going to be doing. I'm going to be doing that for every table calculation in that calculated field. So each table calculation is going to be computed using a table cross or table down or specific dimensions or whatever. All of the table calculations are going to do that. Doing it this way, where each calculation is separate, and then you put window functions into separate fields, then you get to set the aggregation differently, right? And that's what we're going to do in this. Let's go ahead and remove this, and that's what we're going to do in this example, because I want them differently. So let's do just a second here. Okay. Yes. Okay. So what we're going to do is we need to figure out how we're going to use the compute using here, right? So we have our options here. We need to do some rearranging. We need to put, it needs to be this way. For each property and week date and status date, I want you to do that, and I want you to do it at the deepest level, so at the status date level. So I want you to do the averaging at the status date level, right? But I want you to restart the I want you to restart the averaging every weekday. And you can see our numbers started to change, right? So if I go back here and do none, things are starting to change, right? Just like that, okay? They're not right, but they're getting there. They're close. Things are changing. That's good. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to do this. Now for this, what we need to do, again, specific dimensions, we only want to do it for status, date, and weekday. Okay? And to the untrained eye, so first, let's talk about this. So what are we doing? Well, we're doing this is the running sum calculation. The running sum, basically what we're doing is we're doing the running sum part here, right? And how do we want to aggregate that? Well, what we want, if we go back into it, is we want to aggregate that by status date and week day of status date. And we're going to uncheck property, because that's the defining dimension that we want everything. That's basically the restarting, essentially. That's essentially what this is. It's kind of the same, right? I could have, I could mess around. I could check property and mess around with the order of things, or I can just leave it unchecked, and that does the exact same thing as restarting every, right? So that's how that's working. So we're doing a running sum by status date, by weekday for each property. Now, this doesn't look right? But here's where the magic comes in. They're all using the same scale. So let's go in here and let's do independent ranges for each row and column and watch what happens. And we'll also uncheck include 0, and bang, there it is. Right? So let's look at our example here. Let's get rid of our axis menu here. Let's do a label. Boom. There it is. Just like that. So now what you can see here is we have dual ranges here, right? Or not ranges, we have dual marks. Anybody if you want to take a guess, or if you know why we have why we have two marks here, why we have two mark labels for every dot, put it in the chat. Why do we have two mark labels showing up? So, the nesting, yeah. So essentially, this is why. So let's go look down. So good guess, Peter. Like that. So let's look down at our status bar here, and you can see that we have 945 marks on this column. So the other thing that I like to do, first thing I like to do is I like to look down below and see how many marks we have. So there's 945 unique pieces of data in this sheet. Where are they? They're all stacked on top of each other. So that's what we've got to handle next. So right now, all of the Sundays, again, because we've aggregated this to the weekday, every single Sunday at the chord is stacked up on top of each other. So when we say mark labels, when we say show mark labels, it's trying to show mark labels for 45 Sundays. So let's figure out a way that we can fix that. So one of the things that Luke, I think, says, yeah. So match the formatting. Okay, we'll get there. Bonus. Return just 21 marks. How on earth are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use one of my other favorite table calculations. What we need to do is we need to return just one mark for each weekday and property. And the way that we're going to do that is this is mark filter, and that is first equals 0. We're only going to return the first mark of the partition. And the partition is weekday by property. So we go up here, we select true. What happened? Well, again, we just put a random table calculation on there, and we didn't get it right. You can see it's doing it. It's doing it the first weekday at every property, which is Sunday, right? And now you can see down here, we only have 3 marks, right? And now when I lasso 1 mark, I get just 1 mark. So I know that it's working. I just need to figure out my partitions, right? So for each weekday and let's see. See, again, this is where I kind of like, yeah, I still got that. Maybe not status date. No. Oh, and the other thing, and here's the other thing about putting table calculations inside of, using a table calculation as a filter. Anytime you change this, as you can see, the mark filter equal yes, no longer there. So you can mess around with all that stuff and it's not going to change because you've removed your filter. So I think it's for just, I think it's just the, let's try this. Edit, filter, apply. Nope. See, this is where it kind of, this is where understanding table calculations is imperative. Oh, did that happen? Okay. Restarting every. Edit filter. Nope. Let's see here. Oh, it's the way that we did the aggregation. It's the way that we did the running aggregation. That's right. Oh yeah, I did that. I did. That's what I was doing. Nope. Oh, but we need to restart every, so we need to, yeah, that's right. Okay, so click OK to get this out of here. Do that. Restart every, oh yeah, no, it was this, it was right that way. Restart every weekday. Now click edit filter and true. There we go. Table calculations, man. This order is, I've still not figured out how to do that, how to do all this the right way. I kind of fumble around until I get it. But now, and then once I get it, it's weird. Like, once I figure out the right order of things, and then I kind of reverse engineer and be like, oh yeah, duh. But, so what we're doing here, for each weekday and status date, remember status date is on detail, so everything is in here. And each property, we want to restart every weekday and every property, right? So we need to find the first date of the first Sunday at the property, the first Tuesday, and so on and so forth. So now when I click that, it'll go away. Next thing I need to do is put property on room, property on color. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that helped. So again, what we did is we learned how, or we didn't learn, we talked about how to do different types of aggregation. The first thing we did is we had to do a row level calculation to calculate the check-ins and check-outs for each single day. That was the first thing we did. Then from there, what we did is we did, once we took care of our measures and our statuses of check-in and check-out, then all we did was we did a sum of that, and then we did a running sum of all of that, so that each consecutive day got more, and we accounted for the people who were still there, right? And then from there, what we did is we created a window average, not option 2. That's how we did it wrong, right? We created a new calculation on top of the running sum that did a window average of that running sum. And then we talked about the differences between putting all of your table calculations in one as opposed to splitting them out into different things. And the benefit of that is if you do it as all separately, you can set your table calculation, you can set them differently for each nested table calculation. So if you have, and there's no limit to how many table calculations you can nest, right? And when you get into some of the really crazy bespoke visualizations like chord diagrams and all those crazy ones, you're definitely going to have multiple nested inside of each other, and you can have, there's no limit, right? So why would you want to use one over the other? Well, as I mentioned, if you put all of your table calculations in one, then the way that you set this dialog box up is going to apply to all of those table calculations. And sometimes that's necessary. So go ahead and think about how you want to do that. Otherwise, set them up separately. Then you can nest them, and then you can set them up all the same. Figure out a way that works for you. However you want to do it, should be good. All right. What else? What else are we missing here? Formatting, I think. Okay, so formatting, show header. Get rid of column grid lines, column dividers, like that. We don't have row labels, like that. We're rotating this. There we go. What else? What's our size on our dashboard? 500 by 500. Okay. There we go. Put in our sheet there. Get rid of this. Yeah, we'll delete that. What's this? What's our header name? What's the, okay. That's just, wow, 2022, week 34. What is the average occupancy by weekday? Did I click cancel? I hate when I do that. Okay, but you kind of get the idea, right? What do we have? Do we have any crazy tooltips? No, we don't have any crazy tooltips. Cool. So there you go. There it is. Bang, bang, boom. Good week. Good first week back. Hopefully y'all enjoyed that. Learned a few things about table calculations. Yeah, that was a good time. So we'll be back next week. Hope everyone has a great week. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next time. Go forth and viz.